if you look up in the north sky, just above Ursa Minor, and if you have a telescope or binoculars, you may be able to see a comet. It's not a brilliant viewing comet. If you're looking through a telescope, it might look like a bit of a blodge, a bit of a blurry mess, to be honest. Some comets that you see through telescopes particularly look like a ball and a tail. This one doesn't look so much like that. If you are looking for it, I would advise that you look for it first thing in the morning. If you're looking at night, the moon is up, and that makes it much harder to see. So if you're looking about 5 o'clock in the morning, when it is very cold. Nonetheless, if you look to the north, just north of Ursa Minor, you may well be able to see it. You can kind of see a blob with the naked eye. You can see it much better with a telescope or with binoculars. So that's the astronomy part. Now the rabbi part, which is, what's the blessing that you say over a comet? Because if it is something extraordinary and wonderful, there should be a prayer for it. So we go to the Mishnah first, in Masechet Brachot, which says, on witnessing zikin, and on witnessing earthquakes, thunderclaps, and storm and lightning, one should say, Shekocho ugevarato malei olam. That's the last part of the traditional blessing formula. Blessed are you, our eternal God, ruler of the world, whose strength and might fill the world. And that Mishnah then says, on seeing mountains, hills, seas, rivers, and deserts, one says a different blessing, Oseh Vereshit, or Oseh Maaseh Vereshit, thanking God who creates creation, who makes creation. So then, the question that rabbis ask is, what is zikin? On seeing zikin, on witnessing or experiencing zikin, earthquakes, thunderclaps, storms, lightning, we say, we thank God whose strength and might fills the world. So what are zikin? So we go to Talmud, Masechet Brachot, page 58b. What are zikin? Shmuel says it's a comet. What's the difference between a comet and a shooting star? Well, a shooting star isn't actually a star. A shooting star, is the better term, is a meteor. It's a rock, a piece of space debris, natural space debris that's falling to Earth and burning up on the way. And so these meteors go extremely quickly through the night sky. You might see one for 1 second if you're lucky. I actually saw one once for about 5 seconds. It was extraordinary. That was definitely a moment for blessing. It was very slow and very low, moving across the sky. So close, in fact, I could hear it. But normally, a meteor is a very quick thing. If it lands, it becomes a meteorite. But as it shoots through the atmosphere, burning up, it's a meteor. These things are really fast. A comet, however, is a ball of dust, gas, ice, and so on that is continually moving around the solar system. The comet that is visible now hasn't been back to Earth for 50,000 years. So it's really been a very long time. And these things continually orbit around the solar system. And occasionally they do collide with planets, which can be extremely dramatic. So Shmuel says zikin are comets. And he also says, I'm as familiar with the paths of heaven as I am with the streets of Nehardea. He says, with the exception of a comet, I have no idea what that is. He was a good astronomer, but he just couldn't understand. And the reason he couldn't understand is, for the rabbis, the Earth was the center of the universe. And so they didn't have a concept of the solar system as we have it, and they certainly couldn't understand the idea of balls of ice and gas and dust and so on, just continually orbiting around the solar system. So he says, I don't know what this is. So Rav Huna, the son of Rabbi Yehoshua, says, what happens is, when you see these things, heavens torn open just for a moment, and you get to see the big bright light behind. It seems that Rav Huna is talking about a meteor, not a comet. That as it dashes across the sky, it's almost like a temporary tear in the heavens themselves. It's ripped, you see the light behind, and it's gone. Because they didn't realize that these were rocks that were constantly falling to Earth. So it seems that Shmuel has a sense of a comet, but others who are commenting thinks that zikin are, in fact, meteors. Rashi, medieval commentator, says Zikin are stars that descend like an arrow, or that shoot like an arrow in the sky from place to place. And he says it's as long as a staff that is shot, and it looks like it's opening up the heavens. Rashi at least acknowledges it's not actually tearing the heavens open and getting to peek behind, but it looks like it. So it seems that Rashi is describing a meteor, not a comet. Comets stay in the sky for a long time, actually sometimes weeks, whereas a meteor is over in an instant. So a star that descends like an arrow from one place to another place, that's clearly a meteor. Maimonides says, let's work out what the blessing is. The blessing over Zikin, he says, is not the same as what Talmud says. Because earlier on, as I mentioned, Talmud says on seeing Zikin, you say, Baruch atah Adonai, shekocho u'gvurato malei olam, God whose strength and might fill the world. Maimonides says, Oseh ma'aseh v'reshit, you say, God who makes creation. So it seems that Rashi is talking about meteors, and Maimonides is talking about comets. And the reason I think that is because where Talmud talks about these quick things and these powerful things, and you thank God whose strength and might fill the world, when you see mountains, hills, seas, rivers, deserts, things that are here for longer, you thank God who creates creation. Comets linger in the sky, so I think Maimonides is talking about a comet. So Maimonides says we say Oseh v'reshit, God who makes creation. So you could say that's the answer. The answer to what is the blessing over seeing a comet is Oseh v'reshit, thanking God who creates creation, or who makes the works of creation. But in traditional Jewish style, there's another opinion as well, from the 16th century, from the Shulchan Aruch, which agrees with Maimonides and says you should say the prayer that thanks God who creates the wonders of creation, but it says you can add the other prayer as well, whose strength and might fill the world. And that way, over 2,000 years basically, we have a discussion of two different blessings, and ultimately it's reconciled. Do we say this blessing or do we say this blessing? And the Shulchan Aruch says, yes. Yes, you say that blessing and you can also say this blessing. So I do encourage you to go and see this comet if you're able to. You need to make sure that it's very dark for you to see. You need to turn off all your house lights, ask the neighbors to turn off their lights, go away from street lamps and anything like that, and you will have a chance of seeing this rather green splodge in the sky, especially if you have a telescope or binoculars. It is worth seeing because no one has seen it in 50,000 years, and we won't see it again for another 50,000 years. And I think that is really quite an extraordinary, wondrous thing in the works of creation. And so I encourage you, if you're able to go out and see it. We've got lots happening this Shabbat, particularly Eli's Bar Mitzvah ceremony. We encourage you to join us for that on Saturday morning. And I hope to see you soon. I wish you Shabbat Shalom.